Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate Stuff, podcast where we dive deep into the world of real estate investing and the random stuff that makes life interesting. I'm John Whitfield, joined by my co-host Carlos and Mara from Investor Fuse and Carrot, and BP uh, is invisible today from Ted Sysops and Mobile Home Operator. Awesome. Well, we're getting into quite the subject today. Feel like it's important to start this podcast by saying we are not lawyers. We do not read legal documentation and provide advice that you should stand with 100%. And the reason I say that is because today we're talking about the TCPA guidelines that are coming into effect January 27th, which is what? Monday?
That would
Monday.
be, yes, Monday.
And so these guidelines came out I had like late last year because we had a podcast where we talked with what's his name? I'm forgetting, from Property Leads.
Andy
Kaloji from Property Leads. And we kind of talked through those guidelines and what he would have to do to change his PPL business to stay compliant within these guidelines. And so to prepare, we've in just the last few days, we've had a lot more questions. I mean, we weren't receiving any questions about these new guidelines. And then just the last few days, I feel like it's kind of popped up. I originally didn't really look too much into it because it seemed like the guidelines were really targeted at businesses like PPL vendors that generate leads and then sell that information to other people. However, there does seem to be some very applicable guidelines coming into play with this new regulation going into effect on the 27th that would affect the average investor and how they generate leads. So we're going to walk through all of that and break it down. But first, let's set the lay of the land. So A2P 10 DLC is something that a lot of people are aware of. And I think it's important to understand the differences between TCPA compliance and A2P 10 DLC compliance. There's BP. He's back.
I misjudged my 5-minute wait time.
So A2P 10 DLC is kind of like the carriers, Verizon, Sprint, and AT&T got together and said, how can we help our consumers have a better experience? And we're going to enforce these guidelines because we have a monopoly on how text messages are delivered. And so it's not like a law that you can read and then be held accountable to. It's just, companies coming together and putting up these kind of guidelines that need to be followed, and you have to be approved for a campaign, and your campaign can be removed. You could get this, have your campaign removed on one provider and then go to another provider and get approved again because there's no kind of database that combines this all together so that you're aware. TCPA is actual law. And it does have attached to the law fines that you can be issued for each occurrence of the law that you're breaking. So it's a very important differentiation there. This one has a lot more legal ramifications than A2P 10 DLC has, because technically A2P 10 DLC has zero legal ramifications. It's just a process you had to follow. So
for the TCPA, what laws are, folks, just for people that have listened to this, we've all heard about people the cost of doing marketing, you get fined for ringless voicemails or cold calling or something like that. What laws are they actually breaking / getting fined for?
So yeah, I mean, we'll get into that. And so it's the new guidelines kind of specifically focus on a few areas. So they focus on one-to-one consent. They focus on robocalling and robo-texting. And then opt-out rules for people saying, I don't want to be contacted anymore. Those are kind of the three biggest things that it's making change with the new laws, and that you can be fined for if you don't follow. I do believe specifically the consent. I guess all of them. There's different fine amounts, and I think if I remember correctly, they can range from $500 to a couple $1,000 per or what's the term I'm looking for? Like
Violation?
Hmm?
Instance?
Violation. Thank you. Okay, so it goes into effect on Monday, so be aware of that.
Crazy.
So let's talk about consent requirements first. So we're going to go in and specifically talk about cold calling, cold texting, and PPL vendors. But the most important parts about is
yeah, but when you're talking about, we're going to talk about cold calling, SMSing, and PPL vendors, you're almost basically categorizing two different things: either do it yourself or have someone do it for you, because this is going to make it. I mean, I haven't done the research, but I'm just listening to you, and it's like, if I'm cold calling and SMSing, blasting, the level of detail and like what I have to do now becomes more costly. It becomes more strict. It's going to become more of a headache and a weight on my back office. And it's like, or I do a PPL or something, and like they worry about it. And am I held liable for them? Like if I get the lead from them and, and I call it, and they have something up, am I liable?
you're
That's a good
liable.
question.
So
That's a
it's
very
the
good question.
person,
Oh, shit.
like the consumer can report you as being the one that broke the rules. I do think that this is like they can go after a PPL vendor, but the liability seems to fall on the end person who's doing the
Yeah,
actual
that
phone
doesn't make
calling and
sense because
texting.
it's like, okay, let's say I make some money. Maybe I'm an average wholesaler doing like gross $1 million a year, netting like 200-300K. What are you going to go after me for, right? Like I tried suing someone once, and the lawyer was basically like, this only works if they have something you want, right? Like, what do they have? Like, what's at their assets? Versus going after me versus going after a PPL company who's making $5-10 million, netting $2 million or $3 million a year. It's like,
I mean, that's probably how it's going to go up, and the lawyers that want to go after people, they're going
yeah,
to want to
because
go
who's
up
going to
the
go
funnel.
after a small guy? Like Carlos
Yeah.
is over here out of his mom's basement dialing somebody, and he violates it. Like, what are you going to? What are you going to garnish his self-employed wages?
Yeah.
Like, what are you getting from him?
It seems like the biggest thing that they wanted to target was like you go to a website and you put in like yes, I would like to receive confirmation, and in that consent it says you consent to being to being contacted by us and our partners. And then that business then goes and sells your information to 10 other people, and you just started getting like lambasted with phone calls.
Oh yeah,
That seems to be like the type of a person that they're
the
going
eyes
after.
feed the lead. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, in just general consumer, like beyond the real estate investing industry, like data, like selling is a massive problem. And that seems to be what they're really trying to curtail. But we generate leads, so it certainly affects our industry. And so like the first piece is the consent. So a lot of people had to add forms onto their websites to be able to be A2P 10 DLC approved. And it seems like that language, in order to be TCPA compliant, needs to be updated. So most people already have like the
Is Carrot
company,
doing that?
like updating it for people for this TCPA. No, but you can go in and change it yourself. So you can go change the verbiage, but we haven't updated the template.
Note to Carrot, you should really fucking do that.
Well, it's interesting because like the guidelines don't explicitly say what it is that you should put into the consent. So like I've put this all. I had a long conversation with ChatGPT and plugged it in with all of its resources to go look at, and let me find the section where I asked it what the consent should be. So currently we say, I agree to receive text messages from company name, message and data rates may apply. And then there's a second checkbox for I agree to the terms and conditions and privacy policies. So that's A2P 10 DLC compliant. For the new TCPA requirements, what they want you to have say is, I consent to receive auto-dialed and or pre-recorded text messages from company name regarding specific purpose. So real estate opportunities or you got to like explicitly say what it is the communication is going to be about, because if you start communicating outside of what they consented to be agreed upon, it can be considered a violation.
I get what you're saying, but I'm an idiot, okay? I am a Neanderthal real estate guy. I just want my website. Like, who's setting this up for me? I don't want to fucking worry about this. I just want my website that has a name and an email field. You click submit, I get a fucking lead, and it's all handled for me. Who's doing that?
So we will be updating. Like we have to go check with lawyers what it is that they say that we put. Like Carrot at large is not going to say, "Hey, ChatGPT told me to put this in. Let's
Yeah.
go with it."
No, I get that. But like there's got to be something, right? Because and then it's like maybe you have to click a link that then has more legal jargon
Yeah,
and
it
all
takes
that.
them to the terms and conditions and
Who's
privacy
writing
policy.
all of that? Because I don't want to do that. I'm just
So
a
Carrot did update
wholesaler.
our terms and conditions of privacy policy like less than a year ago with a firm that specifically handles compliance. It probably now needs some more updates based off of this.
Crazy.
Yeah. So like it will go through all of those those proceedings.
It's going to take some time for Carrot to be able to provide this to its customers. And then if you're getting a website from somebody else, you have to specifically, I imagine, like you're getting like a, what do you call it? What's it called? Fiverr, Upwork, whatever website.
Yeah.
Like, dude,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to specifically make sure that you're knowledgeable enough to have this stuff included. Or if you go to another company that just custom designs them for our industry, again, you're gonna have to specifically make sure that this is in compliance and it's like written into your contract with them. Because like if you mess up,
Yeah.
that's a concern. It's like who's
Yeah,
doing
and the biggest thing with the compliance that changes for the average real estate investors, most of us already have the consent form checkbox for text messages. It must explicitly say calls now. So if they don't agree to receive calls, then you're not allowed to call them according to this new law. So
Wow.
the checkbox must say, and what a lot of, if you go and search this new guidelines, what a lot of people are saying is that the consent that you might have already received may not apply anymore. I don't think they're going to go after you for people like leads that have been generated before the law went into effect. But a lot of like the blogs out there that are trying to generate traffic, they're saying you have to go through and audit your entire contact database and re-get consent for all of them.
Stupid.
Right?
I mean, listen, it's.
Can you email them? Is email under consent or no? Or it's like they send their information into your Carrot website or whatever website, and you just can't
doesn't
talk to
say
them?
you explicitly have to say email because like you have to put the text messages in for A2P 10 DLC compliance, right? And the calls are now in for TCPA compliance, and TCPA compliance also talks about texts. Nothing is talking about emailing.
I more so meant, is it possible or is it under consent to email them like text? If you don't
According to
have
the
it
guidelines, if you don't put in email, you're not going to be fined for that because they are not talking about email.
Listen,
they don't care about email.
I was having this long thought process long before we started talking about this, about like some decisions I've made, and it's like I feel like getting out of wholesaling and getting into like long-term, bigger investments, commercial real estate, dude, like perfect timing. I'm not saying wholesaling's dead. I'm just saying it's definitely dying for the average.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah, and it's not that you can listen. Somebody's gonna be like, I don't care about any of this, and they're gonna just, and they can. You're not gonna. You could, but most likely you're not getting sued if you're worth $2 and you're 19 years old. So like, yeah, and you could build it up and then worry about it. Like, I get it, but dude, this is.
It's getting.
I mean, this is your life, because this is our lifeblood. Like, there's no other way to generate the leads other than reaching out to people or having them reach out to you via paid traffic. But it's like the bandit signs are dead. I mean, not, they are pretty much like. They're not what they used to be, especially with the advent of the internet. That was cool back in 2010. So like, you have no other way. Cold calling's harder. Like,
well, that's the thing I'm about to get into. Is technically cold calling is now illegal because you don't have consent to call.
That's insane. Nobody has consent to call.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still getting fucking calls, bro. When does this kick in? 4 days?
Dude, some lawyers are going to.
Well, that's the interesting thing is like, so A2P 10 DLC technically made cold texting illegal, right? And so these are some of the questions that I asked, and TCPA now is making it even more illegal. But people are still cold texting, and the ramifications really haven't come down on them. So like it is ambiguous. Like, can you cold call them once? I asked it that question, and they're like, yeah, that seems okay. But it's like the repetitive cold calling that.
The problem is they're not going to know.
Yeah.
Like back in the day when I was doing huge volume, when I had my team in office, It's like, do you know how many times, like, yeah, we did it, and like I get it, but we knew how many like messages and texts and RVMs we were sending out, and we were getting blamed for shit that we didn't send out because they don't fucking know. We'd take them off our list, and they would call back the same number because 2 days later they got more messages. They weren't from us, but because we had picked up for them, they were calling us back to say, hey, you're still sending me this shit. But Brian, like, that's not me. Like, I get you're just attributing every investor sending you messages to the one guy that actually picked up for your complaint. But like, and so that I could see that as being a problem too. It's like they would
have to like go and like to the company, and like there'd be a lot of lawyer shit involved in like figuring out who's actually responsible. So like I imagine cold calling is going to continue. I'm not going to be the one to say it's dead.
No, but I mean, I've noticed a huge rise in the acronym business name being used. You know, whatever, just like ABCD LLC, and it's like ABDC home buy. It's not, instead of back in the day, it was like equity cash offer, national cash offer, and you had a brand. Now it's just like ECO LLC. And it's like you now have to figure out what the E, the C, and the O stand for to figure out who the fuck they are. And it's like I see a lot of that, especially in text messages. They're just like, hey, this is like ECOT home buyer. And you're like, and that's not even the real entity name.
Yeah. It's like the legal name they're hiding under. And so auto dialers are another thing that are targeted. So manual calling is still okay, but like the auto dialers, you have to explicitly get consent to use somebody's phone number in an auto dialer, which I think is kind of weird. And like, how are they going to test this or find this out? And did you actually call this number? So what a lot of people are saying is you got to keep like a lot better records on how you're communicating, where you're communicating, and what tools that you're communicating with. For all of the tools that you do. And then there's a difference between the messaging. I don't think this necessarily matters for our clients because we're always talking about buying their house. But like you can't, if somebody opted in to receive content about how to buy their house, you can't then message them about buy my Amazon drop shipping program. The messages you have with them always have to be around what they consented to receive messages about.
So that's interesting. On a completely different topic, take your favorite I sell anything guru, Ryan Pineda. Right. It's like this motherfucker will literally sell anything that comes in front of him and like slice it up as his own and like pitch it out. So like, you know, I come into his funnel because I want to learn flipping, but then he's got like all this other shit, his CPA business.
Could be personal brand. Yeah, personal brand business, CPA company.
That's very interesting, is like now so I go back to Carlos's thing, is it does email count for that rule?
No.
So okay.
Email does not count for that rule.
Because that's how most gurus pitch their stuff, is via email, because we all care about the email list, because we want your attention via email to complete a sale, not via text per se. The text is more about like, hey, don't miss the webinar reminders than it is. That's interesting though.
Yeah. And the same thing, like I was switching topics, but yes, like purchasing lists and skip tracing, none of those phone numbers that you get are consented. It kind of goes into why cold calling, cold texting is.
But like people in theory could still be doing this. They're just running the risk of.
No.
Yes.
That's bullshit though, because it's like telling me, and maybe I misunderstand this, that company is allowed to sell the phone numbers.
Yeah, because that's just data. They're not doing anything with it.
Okay. My analogy for this, and maybe this is just a Neanderthal analogy here, but it's like you can sell me cocaine, and that's not illegal. But the second I go and sniff it, it becomes a drug, and now that's illegal. I'm now, you know what I mean? Like it's, I feel like you shouldn't have been selling me the coke if I can't sniff the coke, bro. Like there's some issues here. And so like how is selling the data legal? If it's,
well, you can use it for email.
But let's just say the phone number. So let's say I get John Whitfield cell phone, right? First name, last name, phone number.
I
And
could
I
take
go,
that and put it into a retargeting audience inside of Facebook. That's not illegal.
so that's what I don't
That's
know.
crazy.
I just feel like you shouldn't be allowed to sell this stuff. I feel like there's, and maybe it's because the people selling it are the ones who are controlling these laws.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
We still want to sell. We just want it harder for the people to buy.
That's so crazy.
yeah, it's like the pharmaceutical companies, right? Like, yeah,
Mhm.
all this, I don't want any of the liability. I want to sell you the drugs, but hey, listen, if you hand that drug to this person without a prescription, you know what I mean? Like, it starts to get
Yeah.
hazy. I just feel like that's a double standard. You could
Mhm.
sell me the data that I can't use without violating a law to use it.
Yeah.
Unless I pull, yeah.
So I think the biggest thing though that it does affect in our industry, and this is what we've already talked about because we knew it was going to affect, is the PPL industry.
Yeah.
So technically the PPL industry, in order for them to be compliant and for you to receive a compliant lead, and my research, what it kind of said is this is up to the end user to make sure that they are receiving compliant leads, is that when that prospect goes to any of the PPL lead sites and puts in their information, your name has to be the one that is contacting them on that kind of form that they're submitting the information on.
Not my name, my company name.
Yes, your company name, correct.
God, could you imagine if it
You
got
get to
down
put your
this?
personal name.
And then, so you put Brandon Patterson down, and so my employee can't fucking call you without it being a violation. Like, bro,
Exactly.
you want to talk about a fucking bottleneck? That would
They
be,
have to opt in for each team member on your company.
it'd be fucking insane. I would just be naming everybody fucking Adam Smith. Be like, everyone's name is Adam now.
Some people do that. I remember Victor, longtime IF guy. All his employees, they would obviously have different names, but all of them would be named Alex
Do you
and
remember the Pat Live thing back in the day?
gender neutral
Pat
names,
Live.
Alex and
Yeah.
something else. I forget.
Pat was a huge. Jesse and Pat were the ones we used to use because they were very gender neutral. You had no
Mhm.
idea who it was. It can be either guy or girl.
Mm-hmm.
Remember from the
Yeah.
old SNL? It's just Pat.
I don't think I've seen that one.
You never saw that, and it'd be like the old the Bears and that guy, and he'd
I
be
love the
like,
Bears.
and the dude would be just very asexual, and you would have no idea whether this was a dude or a girl, and it'd be like haircuts, boys, girls pricing, and she'd be like, how much for a haircut? And he'd be like, what one do you think it would be? But yeah, I got you. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, as somebody who gets calls and stuff, it's like, cool. I'm down for this.
Mhm.
I think we're talking about, like, if you're talking about hierarchies or like classes of you know how we have like lower class, middle class, upper class, and human, right? Like in our economic world, in like business, I think it almost eliminates you. I think the lower class will survive because I think the lower class just doesn't give a shit about the rules, right? They're going to break the law.
Right.
They're criminals. Like, they don't care. They're just trying to survive and get in. I think the middle class will get shoved out because they're the ones who have something to lose. They're the ones who are going to try to comply but can't afford to comply. They're going to the ones who are going to try to pivot but maybe can't make it happen. And then there's going to be the upper class. And it's like some middle class may go to upper class, but then the ones who are in upper could become megalodons. Basically, like, they have the money and the lawyers to be able to work this out. They have the tech staff, the website designers, they have all of these things to work out, the operating manager to work out the processes, and they'll just fucking crush it. And take over markets, and maybe that's when you start to see the $1 million a month wholesaling. You know what I mean? Just big.
Yeah.
And the regulations help people like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it definitely does help people like that.
I was gonna ask just in general. I know we have a little bit of an outline here, but like, who are the biggest winners of this happening? One of them
People
could be
are already generating their own leads on websites. If that's your main strategy and you are excelling at that, like, you are primed to.
As long as you have the lawyers and you comply with all this, you build out the processes and the systems for it.
Yeah. If you are reliant on cold calling and cold texting, I mean, not to say that like you need to stop. Again, not a lawyer, but you are definitely entering a realm into which you are more legally responsible and open to the risk of receiving violation fines.
I also may
and
throw
PPL
one in.
Vendors. If you
I may also
PPL.
throw one in. PPC companies that manage PPC for folks may be a winner in this.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they can position against PPL companies.
Well, they can position as, I don't think I really care about the difference between a PPC and a PPL as in that argument. I think I care about it more in the, I'm going to do this for you. You just took away, basically what this government did was give one more pain for that PPC company to sell me on why I should use them instead of trying to do it myself as a middle class wholesaler, right? Using that analogy. And it's like, because the upper class wholesalers, they don't need the PPC company. They probably tried it when they were middle class and now they're doing it on their own. And they probably do dabble in some PPL too, just to diversify, but generally they don't need that stuff. So really it's going to be the PPC companies now selling one more pain point, which as a middle class wholesaler, it's a huge pain point. I got to design a website, make sure it's compliant, make sure my leads, my click boxes are all there. I'm not smart enough to know how to do that. I'm not tech savvy. You're going to do this and I don't have to do it. Boom.
Yep. Done for you for sure. It's gonna,
I mean, it's wild because even in my business with like mobile home parks, there's a lot of guys who call sellers and stuff, and all this applies to them too. But a lot of these guys in this part of the industry aren't savvy enough to know any of this stuff. Like they're just not up to date on it because they're living in a different world. They're literally using like grasshopper lines and it's so hard. Yeah, I was in this Facebook group chat with people, and they were all like pitching their grasshopper. And was like, "What phone service did I use for this?" And they're like, "Oh, Grasshopper." And I'm like, "Dude, who the fuck still uses Grasshopper?" That was like back in 2012.
This is the first phone company I used when I was trying to become a business consultant.
That's what I used back in the day when I needed multiple phone lines when I was working with like the banks, and I had all these people calling me. I needed call forwarding, so they didn't just call my cell. It was like my first routing. You know what I mean? But anyway, I'm just saying in general, it's like even that part of the business that affects, I don't know as much but they're not doing huge volume. There's only 40,000 parks in the entire, you know what I mean? So,
right.
But what I'm getting at is, again, for me, I'd rather just buy from the wholesaler, my park, buy from the broker, because you think about my business isn't surrounded on selling deals. My business is surrounded on buying deals and making fees, right? And residual income. And so why should I add on this extra headache? Why should I add on this extra overhead cost managing? Well, I was going to use an example. I followed this guy, and he was struggling a couple years ago. I'm not going to say his name, but it's props to him. He does some dumb shit still, but I watched him go almost completely bottom out as a wholesaler with his partners. And he was very open about it on Instagram. And he pivoted and he got rid of all of that and just went to flipping. And then from flipping, he went to buy and hold and raising money from the people that he knew to buy and hold. You know what I mean? And now he's doing multiple flips a month. He's making money. He's buying. He's not worrying about trying to keep up with the Joneses of doing 10 deals of wholesaling and running sales team. And you could see he's out at properties. He's having fun. He's driving down the road with his kids to go look at a house and And dude, let somebody else worry about all that shit. So what? They make 30K and you make 30K. You do the work and they just sell a contract. But you didn't have to deal with any of that shit. You just get the deal and you make your money your way. They make their money their way.
Yep. Different world when you do it like that. Less stressful for sure.
But what I'm getting at is this going to push more people? Because do you remember 5 years ago, the easiness of it pushed flippers into wholesaling?
Yeah.
Everybody who's a wholesaler, a lot of these dudes, were all flippers.
Yeah.
Donnie was a flipper. Ryan was a flipper. All these guys, everybody was a flipper back in the day. I was a flipper, and then we all went to wholesaling. But now is this?
Do you think it's going to do the reverse?
So my thing.
Megalodon wholesalers who are getting all the deals, and everybody else is a flipper.
And then the off market becomes on market. There's no such thing as off market anymore. It's just a different market. It's main, you know what I mean? First Street, Second Street. It's MLS is First Street, and this is just Second Street. It's just a different way to get it, but the competition's there. It's not like it was back in the day.
Yeah.
And one person called you with one fucking deal.
Yeah.
And you had
But
consent to do it.
But honestly, I didn't mind. I didn't mind competing in the back in the day, like before the internet took over and people from like out of state were coming in. I didn't mind competing with people on the MLS. You had to be fast. You had to build relationships. You had to make competing offers. You know what I mean? And you made sure your numbers fucking worked, and you had to be creative. And you could still get deals.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that comes back. More people start flipping again, buying in their local markets.
I can see that.
Yeah, I could see that too. All right, the last piece that it kind of affects for our average investor here is opt-outs. So we all know that opt-outs exist in the ATP 10DLC texting world, but opt-outs are more securely enforced for calling. So if you say, don't call me anymore. And I think there were fines attached to that before, right? If you kept calling somebody. But one of the things you have to like record that somebody has stopped and you keep it in your database. And it's kind of a little bit of a gray area. Like if they use language like that says stop communicating with me on a phone call, then that technically means now that you cannot text or email them. So there's this like little bit of a gray area of like, how did they say stop? And what a lot of the suggestions are is like if somebody texts stop, then you respond with you are opted out of text communication from this company, and so you could still call them, because that's one thing we always used to say as well. If somebody says stop on text, you could still call them.
The level of I am over this is unbelievable right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just so over all of this.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad that you're into mobile home parks?
But like, what percentage of people are going to get in trouble, you think, or like face repercussions?
I don't know.
Because like even back in the day, Poppy's talking back in the day, like people back in the day got fined for like ringless voicemails.
Oh, bro, I was sued one time, and I settled. And yeah, it was for ringless voicemails.
At some of the
You have to
masterminds,
settle
probably
for.
like, they say you're not a real man until you do something. That's like at masterminds back in the day. Oh, you're not a real man until you get fined from doing
Fined.
voicemail. But that's how common it felt back in the day, just for context
Yeah.
and perspective.
Yeah.
So Florida has its own. He wasn't on. I forget.
The do not call list.
Yeah, but Florida has a do not call, and there was something about he wasn't on one of them. So like I skirted by it, and then there was this agreement, and we had to go into mediation. The judge just sent us back to a room with a mediator, and I agreed to pay what I agreed to pay, and then I was done. And I was just like, peace out. He was just angry because apparently, that's a long story. Some shit happened with his wife, and he had to pick up the phone, and he thought I was that, and then I pissed him off, and then he came out. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I get you, dude. I get you.
Yeah, that's not the stuff I want to deal with.
Yeah.
But I mean, aside from that, it's like what you're saying, Carlos, is I'm not a lawyer, but I think unless you're making significant money and bragging about it and pinning a target on your back,
Right.
and really pissing people off, I don't think you're getting targeted.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. And let me ask
Now, you have a YouTube show calling
sellers.
Oh, yeah. That's a
and you built your entire brand on it. And somebody figures out that you're the one that called them. Oh, yeah. Now you got a target, bro. Especially if you're like a sassy dude. I follow this one dude on TikTok. He's so annoying. And he just loves railing into people and just to show off on his like videos and stuff. And you know what I mean? Like, and it was like, dude, one day, someone's going to figure out that this channel is connected to you.
Crazy.
Okay. So there's multiple different ways that the repercussions would happen. So government enforcement happens at the FCC level and perhaps the FTC in some. So they're going to go after like the big companies that are like doing this wrong in like thousands upon thousands of different ways so that they can get a big fine. But individuals can now do lawsuits. So individual consumers who receive non-compliant calls or texts can file lawsuits against violators. They can seek damages of $500 per violation for negligent breaches, or 1,500 per violation for willful or knowing violations. Then there's class action lawsuits.
Yeah.
And
That's going to be class action lawsuits against the megalodons.
Yeah. But, and this is what we saw in the ATP 10 DLC world, is that there are attorneys out there that are trolls, and they go in and pretend to be somebody just to watch you break consent, and then they file lawsuits against you. I don't know, like, how much. I mean, I guess if you called them like 10 times, it's like, yeah. Yeah, and so we saw this, and I've heard of this through like some of the people I know in the community. Like they have to provide information to these lawyers because they got subpoenaed in court to provide information, and it's just like a lawyer going after a specific wholesaler.
Yeah.
And they have to provide information.
You know who I would go after if I was a lawyer? Anybody with a brand.
Yeah, because
anybody
with
a brand. 100%. I'm not going after Brandon. Brandon's got jack shit. Carlos, fuck him, dude. Yeah. Fuck John. Like, you know what I mean? The little kid who's like 18 trying to come up. You know what I mean? Like, no. I'm going off Ryan, Carlos, all the big guys who have the biggest brands with their own little shows, and they got the Instagram channels, and they're bragging about the mentorships, and because now I know you have multiple revenue streams. So now I know, and then they're going to try to pierce the corporate veil, and they're going to try to link it all together. And if I'm a lawyer, I'm not, but if I was, I would want to make sure my time is going to be compensated well when I take you down, because I would be confident that I could. So I want to know that when I do, I'm getting fucking paid. So I'm talking, I want someone who's making deca millions, not someone who's only making $1 million netting 200K. I want a big payday.
What about for buyers on the buyer side? If people are reaching out to buyers, like say like it's certain like dispo platforms, could those?
Yeah, I feel like the buyers.
Because we think about the seller side, but
buyers have a different mentality though, because like unless you're really annoying somebody, they want to make money, and like you would have to be really pissed. You would have to really get on somebody's bad side for them to do it.
Yeah.
And again, so one of the problems is what I remembered about my thing was he filed for the do not call registry, which is a federal thing, and he filed in a state, like a local civil court. He filed civil charges, so he could only go after the state. So she had corrected him and said, well, you would need to file these charges in federal court to go after him for this, which is why then, and I was arguing that, well, he's not even on the state one, he's only on the federal do not call registry, so how can I be held? And that's when she sent us back into the room. So what I'm getting at is, hypothetically, like these people, you want to, I'm the buyer and John pisses me off and I want to sue him. Like, it's not like I could just go down to my local courthouse. I have to file like a federal case against them if I want federal charges. Like, at least, again, I'm not a lawyer, but that's kind of how it presents to me. And so is it worth my time?
Right.
What am I, as my lawyer told me, what are you expecting to get?
Yeah. So here's like the little bit of a math to maybe scare some people into kind of maybe thinking about doing different types of marketing. But even small scale cold calling or texting campaigns can quickly add up to large financial exposure. For example, contacting 1,000 prospects without consent could lead to $500,000 to $1.5 million in fines. But I don't know if it would work that way, because if one person's coming after you, I don't think it then bottles up. Maybe it would alert itself to like a federal attorney to then go investigate that company, and then you could start to get more fines. But an individual can't, like one of the 1,000 can't get you for $1.5 million.
Yeah, I don't think on a personal lawsuit, I don't think you can, right? Because I'm suing you for what you've done to me. Yeah. But the state or the government bringing charges against you for all of your business.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking about
it. One thing that they're saying about this is a super litigation friendly law. So the TCPA is one of the most litigated federal laws because of its statutory damages and attorney fee provisions, making it a target for individual attorneys and class action firms to use to generate money.
So again, individual person, no. State or government saying, yes, I'm going to do it. Huge money. But again, Now, a class action suit, you get 1,000 people each saying this guy's called me 2 times, 3 times with call logs, and they have proof of it. Now, again, you start packing up those fines. This lawyer is going to pull in like a $2 million, $3 million suit. He's going to get 10, 20% of that. Boom, and the people get like $3 each. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I was a part of some class action suit back in the day, and I got my little check in the mail. You know, you get those things they send you. I think it was I forget what it was. I got like $3, and it was some small amount. And I was like, "What's
Pretty stupid.
the fucking point of this, dude? Like, why did I even sign this thing?" So from now on, I never do them. I always get them in the mail. Like, do you want to join our class action suit? I'm like, no, bro, because I'm gonna get like fucking $4. Like, what the fuck?
It's not worth my time to join your class action lawsuit. But that's it. I mean, in terms of like the information that I learned, I think it's still a good move for anybody that's generating leads from a website to go just adjust your consent form a little bit. We do know of PPL. We have too many acronyms in this industry. PPL vendors who are changing their practices to make sure that it aligns to the TCPA. So make sure you choose a PPL vendor who does do that.
So like, what about people who aren't necessarily trying to sell any? Like, I guess it's selling, but like, what if you're just on my website and you want to be contacted by me? Well, you know, like those contact forms where it's like, yeah, so like no matter what, now even if you're not, so like even for the people that aren't even bothering anybody and literally not even trying to reach out to people, like I'm not even paying for ads. You've come to my website. You filled out the.
In that regard, like nobody's gonna come after you, but technically, you should have a consent box there with calls and texts. Technically, but it's not.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about my stuff for like capital raising. You know what I mean? Like I have ads, or you just come to my site, you read my blog, you follow a link. What do you go to my Instagram?
You need the boxes.
Yeah, and it's like you're like, yeah, I want to set up a call, or I want you to email me or whatever. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you need the check boxes to remain compliant. It's interesting, like in seeing how this is moving, like GDPR. Have you guys ever looked into that? That's the privacy something that happens in the European Union, and their laws are freaking crazy about like how you store the data. And I think there's like time limits on it. Like if somebody's in your database after 6 months, they must reapprove that you can continue to have information on them. If you don't, you must purge them from your database and no longer have any records of them.
Just make it illegal to sell data. We could quash all of this shit.
Sure. I feel like that's going to disrupt a lot of things. Isn't like the world moving towards like data is more accessible and available?
Yeah, again, it should be. Like if I consent in with John can have my data. I'm not disagreeing with that. If I consent into Facebook can have my data. It's Google, my email, but it's when they all start sharing and selling it together to track me and do things and selling it to the, whatever.
Chinese government.
Well, how is it even that it's illegal to text somebody, but you can upload it into a custom Facebook audience?
Because there's no laws around showing ads to people yet.
I feel like that's
texting them.
I agree with you, Carlos. Yeah, just because I'm not messaging you, but I'm using the phone number to be in front of you.
Exactly. Just the principle of it.
Oh, I'm with you. I think this whole thing is fucking
BP's with me.
I don't know. I gotta go look at my website because it's like fucking awesome.
But that's it, guys. We'll see what happens. I'll look forward to hearing if anybody starts to get fines in the industry. I do agree with you though that like this is it's a continued progression since ATP 10 DLC. Now this of it's going to become harder to just enter it. Like we'll still see some of the lower class, the middle class will get smaller, I think, and we'll get more megalodons swimming around inside of our space.
I'm very curious of like in my industry, like Facebook forums. So it's like, you come through a Facebook or an Instagram ad and you do like the 3-tap, 4-tap, question, you want to raise money. It's like, hey, do you want to invest with me? And it's like, how much are you worth? What's your net worth? What are you looking for? Have you ever done this before? Give me your name. Where I almost want to go find one and click through, because now where is that going to be, right? Like, is Facebook going to automatically add that in for you when you're using a Facebook form?
I would hope that they've thought that far ahead, that if you put a phone number or an email, a phone number is what it really cares about. If you put a phone number field on there, that you track consent. But ultimately, the thing is it's up to the individual user to be compliant. It's not up to Facebook to make you compliant.
But that's what I'm saying. You don't get a choice, though. So when you do Facebook forms, it's not like I could drag and drop a fucking checkbox.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because when you're doing the Facebook ad, you're just going through the steps, and then it's like add in the terms policy, like link this, link this. Is there going to be a thing that says, do you want to add, like, I consent? You know what I mean? Otherwise, like, how am I doing it if Facebook doesn't give me this option? I can't code in my own fucking thing on a Facebook form.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I think business, like who you choose, like if TikTok or Instagram came up with and TikTok and X came up with a better way for you to be get in people's information and it be properly consented to, then you will choose that platform over Facebook, because Facebook hasn't given you that option. So I think it's up to Facebook to be, we're a good choice for you to remain.
I'm going to go look is what I'm going to do, because I know there's a step at the end of when you do your form of like the ad and you're completing the ad process. And it's like, question 1, 2, you build your questions. And then that final step is like about the terms, privacy policy, terms and condition. And I'm very curious now, but I guess they don't have to do anything till the 27th, but still. So next week, see if they add anything in.
Yeah.
You could make a good lick doing that if you sued Facebook. Sue Meta for not having consent forms.
Did you hear? So he did this interview. He did this interview with this chick, and she was like on Hawaii.
Zuck?
Yeah, Zuck. And he was like, and she was like, hey, so what's going on with this island thing? He's like, oh, we're just doing a little farming. He's really trying to downplay that he owns like this entire island of Kauai, pretty much. Like he owns all this land.
It's crazy how he steals the land from people too.
Okay, but then she goes, what about this bunker? He's like, that's something that I think everyone's blown really out of proportion. Like we have this basic, he keeps using the word basic. We have like this basic ranch, and wife and I, we built like our basic house, and it's kind of like just a basement, some storage, and she's like, well, it looked like it's a pretty big bunker, like a doomsday bunker. Oh, you want to say that, or hurricane shelter? He's like downplaying this, and like, if you've ever seen the plans of like what it's proposed to be, it's like, she's like, do you know something that we don't know? And that's when he's like, that's just something I think is blown out of proportion. It's like a hurricane shelter, use it for storage. Just like a basement, I think he said.
I don't blame him though. If I had that much money, would I not build a bunker? No, I probably would.
I would. And I wouldn't want anybody to know that I have the bunker, because anybody that knows is going to want to come to it. So then I have to downplay it and be like, it's not a bunker. When it's like, if you ever saw that one movie,
it's just a wine cellar. It's just a wine cellar, guys.
I'd be like, bro, it's a sex orgy room, okay?
You don't want to come in there.
Yeah, I'd be like, bro, some weird shit happens down there. It's like P. Diddy on steroids. You don't want to come down there.
The aquaponics that you see inside of that's not food.
No, that's not a greenhouse room, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out.
Yeah. We will
stay warm out there, everybody.
It is freaking cold the last couple of days.
I'm drinking hot cocoa.
Real.
I need to go make myself some tea.
Speaking of TikTok, Papa P, this is right up your alley. A bone broth hot cocoa recipe. Have you seen that? Have you ever seen this?
Oh my God, that sounds disgusting.
It does, but I'm sure it's probably really good.
Don't send that to me. I'm good.
I'm gonna try it.
You let me know.
Is it like lemon bone broth with?
No, it's a bone broth, but it has other stuff. I don't even think that you taste it really, like heavy cream, syrup. What's the syrup called?
What the hell?
Instead of
going
honey.
into this drink.
Yeah, we're good, bro.
Cool. I'll report back.
That's not how it goes. All right, guys. We'll see you here next week, same time. What are we talking about next week? Do we have a plan? I don't think we do yet.
Not yet.
It'll be something interesting, guys. So stay tuned.
Lock 'em